Hi, Marcus. How are you doing? Today, we're going to have an interview with you and asking you about your involvement in Volpower. So, first things first, how are you?
Hi Alex, I'm all good, thank you. Just had a short break over Easter here, so I'm refreshed and ready to get going with the final task for Volpower.
Talking about the final tasks, you as a individual have been instrumental in the entire project. You've been working with, of course, the project lead project partner, as well as being involved in various aspects from managing, from helping with the volunteers, and also being a researcher. What do you think your individual role was and the role of your organization?
Sure. So as you mentioned, then I'm part of the overall administration team for Volpower, and my organisation at Glasgow Caledonian University has been responsible for the management of the project as a whole, and my job within that team is project manager. So I've been working closely with my colleagues Maggie, Doa, and Umut over these past few years to basically oversee the project and make sure that we meet all the deliverables that, that are expected of us from the European Commission. And lately that's involved an extension of the project by a further 6 months because of some delays that were caused because of the COVID crisis and travel restrictions.
So it's been quite a challenging aspect of in the project itself. That said, you worked quite a bit with volunteering organizations and with volunteers yourself. How was that experience, and what did you see that was the main elements that came out of it?
Sure, yeah, it was really great to have so many young volunteers involved with our project here in Glasgow, especially. I think one of the biggest successes of the project is that we've been able to highlight some of the great work that's going on in the volunteering sector and highlight those individuals themselves. So we've really just, our aim within Volpower Glasgow has been to give some of these young adult volunteers the chance to perhaps develop skills that they might not have had the chance to do beforehand. So we've focused on creative arts exercises mostly when we were able to meet up as a group. So we did a photo voice exercise and we had a photo workshop.
So, when during the project you interacted with the volunteers, are there any particular moments which were, you know, the highlights, the special events, funny events that happened?
Sure. I think one of the personal highlights for me was the collage activity that we organized at the university last year. And we were able to invite our volunteers on site to the university to work with a collage artist. And myself and Maggie and Doa were there as well. And it was great that that could just go ahead. It was just 1 month before the first national lockdown. So we were really lucky that we could do that. And we felt like this was like a creative arts exercise that the young volunteers wouldn't have had the chance to do out with the project. So we kind of thought it was really great to broaden their horizons and get them to think a bit differently about their city that they live in, who they interact with, and also just like encouraging them to come on to the university campus and work with researchers in a really different way to what you might associate with traditional research work.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're saying the volunteers benefited from being exposed to new experiences that otherwise they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I think we, especially with Maggie's help, we really went down this creative arts direction to get them to think about photography, sound recording, video capturing, and different ways of kind of conveying their experiences and everyday lives through using Volpower as a mechanism to do that. And Maggie captured some of that through the digital exhibition that she launched earlier this year as well on our website.
Okay. And with regards to the community, do you feel the community benefited from the experiences that the volunteers obtained and their work as volunteers?
I think that, as I mentioned before, the volunteers that we were working with in the project were already engaged in their volunteering activities before our project came along. So they were all already really involved, especially in this sports volunteering world. But I think that we were able to bring together these young volunteers from different areas and different sectors in Glasgow, um, and kind of like again expose them to new experiences and working with other people that they might not have otherwise met. So I think that all of that will kind of feed back into their regular volunteer work. And a lot of that volunteer work has been disrupted over the last year, of course, with the restrictions in place.
With regards to the volunteers themselves, what were their individual roles in the organizations they were part of? How did they interact with the community? And especially since most of them were third country nationals, how did their background, how did their story impact the community into accepting them or motivate them to form part of something else?
Okay, I think first of all, I can say that we worked with two volunteering organizations. The first, as I mentioned earlier, was a sporting organization called Achieve More. And there we had our volunteers were mostly involved in providing support to sports programs and summer schools, which were organized in areas of the city where children might not be able to afford to go to traditional sports clubs. So we had two young males of Somali origin who have been active volunteers for Achieve More for a number of years. And so when we're speaking with them, they really, get a lot out of helping children realize their sporting goals. Also, one of our young volunteers who we've also interviewed um, is very passionate about becoming a manager for a football team. So this kind of experience is great for him as a practice for what he wants to do in future life. And the kind of relationships that he's been able to build with the young children have been really important for him, and also to feel a part of this wider community in Glasgow, and especially within this sporting realm, has been really, really crucial for him. And it's been really interesting for us as researchers to hear about all the different relationships that he's managed to foster as part of his volunteering, how many different nationalities are present within one football game that's organised by Achieve More, and all the kind of intercultural exchanges that go on within that, whether that's listening to music from a different country or talking about the kind of food and culture that exists in one place that's totally different from another. Yeah, there's all these kind of micro interactions going on within this one sports setting. And another one of our volunteers is working closely within the Roma community here in the south of Glasgow. And so he actively works with young people um, to in kind of community outreach programs and after school activities. And in a similar manner to Volpower, he's using creative arts methods as well, to kind of encourage young Roma youth to succeed and achieve their goals in life too. So there's some really broad reaching objectives of the local volunteering organisations that we're working with, um, but they're really interesting to look at in detail.
The real question is, how did you grow, change, what your feelings were about all of this, and what did you learn? Like, what did you experience that you'd never thought would happen before?
I think it was just great that we were all able to get along together quite well. We were all coming from very different backgrounds and each had very different expectations of how we thought the project would go. But every time we met up, it was a lot of fun, and it was really great to hear everyone's stories and kind of how everyone was getting on. If people were about to start a new college course or had some other kind of big life-changing event had happened, then it was just like another great kind of forum to share all those experiences. So that was kind of like the biggest benefit I saw, was the connections that we were able to make, and we've been able to keep those going until now, which is really good. And especially like through lockdown in the past year, then it was really good that we were still able to organize some activities online. And yeah, those kind of things, I think they meant a lot.
That's good. Then moving on from the volunteering and into the research part, you are a researcher after all. And what would you think were the outcomes that mattered the most in this project, and perspectives that emerged from the work, from the research, and the information gathered?
So Volpower is looking at the impact of volunteering in 7 European countries, and especially looking at this impact of volunteering on young adults of migrant background. Um, And I think that we in Glasgow have been able to form close bonds with our volunteers and really understand how the motivations and what keeps them volunteering. But I think that equally it's been interesting to see how in the other 6 countries the organisations have been able to do the same, and form these really close connections with groups of young adult volunteers. And then in terms of our bigger project work, we've been able to kind of draw comparisons between the different groups. So I think that we've really used our broad range of expertise to investigate and really understand how volunteering is working in our local areas. But we've seen a lot of kind of correlations between the factors that are motivating our volunteers to keep on working, and this again, this idea that we've been able to formulate networks between our volunteer groups between these different countries, of course on the back of our summer school event that we organized in Croatia in July 2019.
That's really cool. And now going specifically on the GCU, and again, once again on your role, what were the key work packages that you worked on, and what were the key outcomes that came as your direct involvement?
Sure. So my role has been mostly to oversee everything that's going on and for people to report back to me. But I've been directly involved in a lot of report writing, also interviewing the volunteers themselves, planning and organizing the workshops that we held with them when those were able to happen in person. And then last year we organized a podcast training event, which we thought went really well. And we had volunteers from across our European partners. Um, and we managed to locate or work with a German podcast trainer who talked us through how you can structure and produce your own podcasts. And it was just brilliant that some of our volunteers were able to put that into practice, and record their stories and put them together like in a really interesting format that we could all listen to online. So that was, one major achievement from last year. And then this year, then I was working with Maggie as well to put together this digital exhibition, which is based on the volunteers' outputs. And that was launched at the end of January this year. And then now, as we go into these final few months of the project, we are organising an academic workshop. So we are having interested academics present their research around the main themes of the Volpower project, but we've also got applications from a wide range of international scholars, so there's going to be like a lot of interesting discussion going on at that event at the end of April. On the back of that, we're going to edit a book, which will be a huge achievement again for the project. So we've got this book that's coming out, and also a final conference event towards the end of May, a final report for the overall project. So there's a few really busy months ahead for Volpower.
So that is really busy, yeah. And I am to understand as well that while doing this, you're also working on your PhD, and it is linked to Volpower. Could you tell us how this is, how it works?
Sure, yeah. So my own research interests are closely affiliated with those of the Volpower project, and I've been able to work with our volunteers from the Volpower project to gather some data for my own PhD. And my own PhD is more interested in migrant identity negotiation, and also the influence of nationalism in the Scottish context, and what that means for young adults of a migrant background that live in Glasgow. And also, I found it really interesting to speak with with the partners in Bolzano about the situation in South Tyrol, where there's also strong minority nationalist sentiment, and the kind of correlations and differences between the two settings.
Well, last question. From your personal experience, on a personal level, what's the one thing that you'll take away from Volpower, valuable experience or knowledge or insight that you didn't have before?
I think that this kind of research project is a really good example of a project that can kind of bridge the gap between academic research and wider community. And it's a really big task. It's not an easy task, but it's kind of helped to bridge that gap, and it shows that this is possible. And it can be difficult to gather the commitment, for example, of young volunteers, and to schedule meetings where everyone turns up and is interested in the activities you've planned. But it's really encouraging that it is possible to do this, and it's given me kind of encouragement towards future projects, that we will be able to do more of the same. And that's thanks to having a really good support team around me that have been able to realize some of those things. And I hope that in the future we can go on working to kind of bring in people from outside academia to the university, and to work closely to kind of achieve some common goals too.
Well, thank you very much, Marcus. This was lovely. Thanks for your insights, and thanks, of course, for your contribution to the project.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I'll speak to you later.